Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Knee Knits. My name is Amy and I talk about all things knitting here, and today I am facing my abandoned whips. I kind of don't want to film this video. I feel like this is facing my worst fears, not necessarily fears, but things that I've been avoiding for specific reasons. I think any knitter who works on multiple projects at a time, some projects will take priority, they'll become your favorites, you'll finish them, and then there's always those neglected whips that just slowly reach the bottom of your project pile. I feel like every once in a while it's good to come back to them and look at them and ask yourself some questions like, why haven't I worked on this? Is it the pattern? Is it the yarn? And figure out if you want to continue knitting it or frog it. So I thought it would be a good idea to do that today with my whips, my abandoned whips. I have a good handful of projects sitting next to me of things that I've started a while ago and just haven't touched since. For me, my average pace of a knitting project or crochet project, if I am enjoying it, is about a month and a half to 2 months. All of these projects have lingered much longer than 2 months. So let's figure out why I haven't worked on them and see if there's any solutions that I can enact to sort of bring them back to life and increase my mojo to work on them. Today I am wearing my Streamline Tank. This is a free pattern by Alexi Tavel of Two of Wands. I knit this in Lion Brand Kobu in the color white, and it's just a really nice tank top to throw on. It's very bra friendly and it has all this nice fisherman rib detail in the front and at the back. So yeah, that's my knit outfit for today's video. So today I have 5 projects to share with you guys. 4 of them are knitting projects. 1 of them is a crochet project. I'm gonna decide if I'm gonna continue working on them or if I'm gonna frog them here with you guys today. I didn't really put the projects in a particular order. I kind of just grabbed them as they were sitting in my whip project bag or my whip pile. So no particular order to these projects, but I'm gonna grab one of them now. All right, so I have project number 1 right here. This is the beginnings of an Oslo hat, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. I am knitting this for myself and I am using Sandnes Peer Gynt in the color Petroleum. This is a DK weight wool and I'm just holding it single for the Oslo hat. The Oslo hat is mostly a stockinette stitch hat, so I just am knitting a tube of stockinette on 3.5mm needles. I feel like I got maybe this far and then just didn't want to work on it. I put a few rounds on it here and there, and now we have just this tube that I have not had motivation to work on. And thinking about this project, the pattern, I don't think the problem is the pattern, because I have made the Oslo hat before in different yarns and have really enjoyed the pattern, have really enjoyed the project, and definitely know that the finished piece is worth knitting. So this is definitely not a pattern issue. If it's a yarn issue, I'm not really sure. So this is my first time using Peer Gynt. I bought 3 balls of this on a trip to Sweden a few years ago, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to make with it, and pretty much a hat is the only option when you have just 3 50-gram balls of yarn. So I knew I wanted to use this for a hat, and Peer Gynt I've never used before, so I wanted to see how it would work in sort of a nice stockinette fabric to sort of get a feel for it and know if I may want to use it for future projects. So the yarn is on the more rustic side. If you've used Sandnes Garn before, I know their more popular yarns are Sunday and Double Sunday. This is definitely a lot more rustic feeling than Sunday, but that's not prohibiting me from enjoying the project. I definitely appreciate a good rustic kind of toothy wool. It definitely has a little bit more scratch factor than maybe the merino. This is not a merino yarn, it's just a Norwegian wool. So I don't think the yarn is the issue, despite all those things I just mentioned. I have been enjoying knitting it. I think it creates a really nice fabric. It's very smooth and the stitches look very tidy. I'm having no issues of splitting, no texture issues with the yarn. So I don't think it's a yarn problem either. Now, As soon as I picked this out of my project bag, I was reminded why I put this down in the first place. And that is that the needle circumference is really small. These are 16-inch circulars, and I believe the finished circumference of this hat is about 20 inches in circumference. So you're dealing with 4 extra inches of circumference of fabric that's on these needles. And you might be able to see that these needles are metal and the stitches are just like eager to fly off the needles. I feel like when I'm knitting it, because I started putting a few rounds on it earlier, that I really have to force my hands to keep the stitches on the needles to prevent them from popping off. If I put this down, I feel like the stitches are really trying to push their way off the needle. So I was like, maybe that's the problem, because if the knitting process is not comfortable, which I don't think it is because I'm forcing myself to keep these stitches on the needles, then maybe I need to change up my tools. So I actually think that that is my major problem with this whip. The 16-inch circulars are just too small for this size Oslo hat. So I am going to put this on a larger needle size to do magic loop, and then I think that'll fix my problem and bring back my mojo to work on this project. So I do use interchangeable needles, and I have a cord ready to go. This is a really long one. It's longer than 40 inches. I actually don't know the length, but I'm going to swap out the cord. About halfway there, you can see how large the circumference is. This definitely was not meant for a 16-inch circular. I think I'm about halfway, so I'm gonna pull my cable out to sort of swap the direction for the magic loop. Stretch this out, see how it looks. And now that it's on magic loop, I can actually try this on because I don't have the risk of losing any stitches off the needle. Let's actually make sure this is the right size. Oh yeah, I think that'll fit well. This is all stockinette, so it doesn't really have a lot of stretch, so you kind of need it to be like just the right circumference of your head with a little bit of negative ease. And now that I'm looking at it on my head, I think it looks really good, and now I want to work on it, which, you know, didn't expect. The Oslo hat, you do a really long stockinette tube and then you fold it up to do like a double folded brim. So I think once I reach that point, that'll give me some more motivation to work on it as well, because you have some like exciting stitches to do, something different from the stockinette that I've been working on mostly. But yeah, this is looking pretty good. Gotta fix my hair now. But I think switching to magic loop really is going to help me work on this project. I'm definitely not going to frog it because I know I want the finished product, and the yarn is really nice to work with. So switching up my tools seemed to be the solution to this issue. So hopefully this will no longer be an abandoned whip, and hopefully you'll see some progress on it in my next podcast. Okay, my next abandoned whip is a half-finished pair of socks. I think a lot of knitters can relate to this. So I have been knitting this pair of socks for my husband Nick, and these are just plain vanilla socks. The yarn that I am using is Lion brand Sock Ease. This is a self-striping, I'm trying to look up the fiber content. Self-striping, 75% wool, 25% nylon sock yarn. This is in the color Dark and Stormy, and this yarn created this really cute sock. And the yarn is definitely on the more like toothy, rougher side. It definitely feels very durable, and that it's gonna make a really nice wearing sock. I think I just got second sock syndrome with this. You know, my husband's foot size is larger than mine, so I was dealing with a lot more stitches than I'm used to in my sock projects. This did take a really long time because I did a pretty sizable leg, and then obviously the foot took a while too. So I don't know, I think I just knit it and it took me longer than I wanted it to, and I wanted to knit some socks for myself instead. So that just kind of deterred me from casting on the second sock. Thinking about like what can like fix the problem with me wanting to work on this, I think I just have to cast on the next sock and just knit it up. There's really not much I can do. Obviously, I think it doesn't make sense to frog this. Like, it's a completely finished sock. I'm halfway there, so I think before I start my next pair of socks for myself, I should just, force myself to cast on this one. It is just a vanilla sock, so hopefully I can work on it somewhat quickly and give my husband a nice pair of hand knit socks. This would actually be his first pair of hand knit socks. I think maybe now that it's summer, maybe there's not a rush on it. That could also be a deterring factor from me wanting to work on it. Like, I know he's not going to wear them now, but knowing that the fall is just around the corner, I think it would be nice if he had these ready to go as the weather cools down. I think another issue that caused me to forget about knitting that second sock is that I sort of shoved this ball of yarn underneath some other yarn in my yarn shelf, so I wasn't visually seeing it. So I think if I take this out, put it like right at the forefront of my yarn shelf, I'll be like, oh, I have to knit that second sock, and I won't forget about it. So that abandoned whip will get worked on, and hopefully I can cast that on soon. This is my next abandoned whip. This is my Barbara shawl. It's a pattern by Gregoria Fibers, and I started this, I want to say in this spring, maybe around March or April, and I just have not gotten very far on it. I feel like I had a lot of motivation at the beginning, and then I just haven't really picked it up. When I sit down and watch TV and knit, I gravitate towards my other projects as opposed to this one. So this one just has not grown in a long time. Now, thinking about the pattern, I don't think the pattern is the issue. I really like the pattern. It's this beautiful sort of offset rib that just goes along the whole shawl. It's a triangle shaped shawl, and I'm doing the large size, so I'm really looking forward to actually wearing the size large shawl come the fall and the winter. It's just going to look really nice with my winter coats, and I think it's just going to be a really nice extra layer of warmth when I need it. So I don't think it's a pattern issue. I definitely still love the pattern and want the finished product. Now the yarn, I don't think is the issue either. So this yarn is Yarn Matters Pure Sport. So it's 100% non-superwash wool in the color Sugar Plum Fairy. I really love this purple color, and the yarn is just a treat to work with. It's so nice and knits so smoothly. It really is nice on these stainless steel needles. And when I do knit on this project, I do really enjoy the yarn, the color, the texture. So all of those things, the yarn is not the issue with the project here either. Now, I have mentioned in my podcast that with this pattern, I have not memorized it yet. It's a little bit difficult to memorize for me. I know some other knitters are working on this, and they've said that they've memorized the pattern repeat, but I just haven't been able to do it. It is a 12-row repeat, so that's just like a lot for my brain to remember. So I feel like when I want a relaxing knitting project to work on, something with a 12-row repeat that I haven't memorized, I obviously will need the pattern in front of me, whether that's on my laptop or my iPad, and that just deters me from working on it, because sometimes I just want to pick this up and work on it. I don't want to have to pick it up, find my laptop, open it up, put it somewhere visible where I can constantly see it while working on this project. And I think that's definitely something that happens a lot with knitting. There are different phases of projects. Obviously, there's phases where you need to look at the pattern, and there's phases where you can just work on the project without looking at the pattern. And I think for me, I want this project to be an on-the-go project, a fast pickup project. So I need to either memorize the pattern or figure out a simple way to refer to the pattern that's not like cumbersome to me. So I think what I'm gonna do is print out the pattern. So I actually have it on a piece of paper. I rarely print out patterns. I always just look at them on my iPad or my laptop, and sometimes even my phone, but I don't like how you always have to jiggle the screen so it stays up. Obviously a laptop and an iPad takes up a lot of space, so printing out the pattern I think will give me an easy way to have a single sheet that I can even fold, or maybe I'll even cut out the specific 12-row repeat and put it on an index card, so it's like really portable. Like I can throw it in my purse, I can just leave it on the coffee table, and I can easily refer to that when working on this shawl instead of needing to drag out a big piece of technology to work on the shawl. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't actually own a printer, so I may have to find like an index card and handwrite it out, or have someone I know with a printer print it out for me. But I think that's how I'm gonna go forward with this. and hopefully that will motivate me to work on it. And because it is a triangle shawl, the increases that I'm working on now have a little bit more complex of a pattern repeat than the decreases that happen after you hit the midpoint of the pattern. So I think I just need to get to the midpoint, and then once I finish all the increases and get to decreases, it'll also be a lot simpler and easy to pick up and work on. So that's my solution with this shawl. Definitely not going to frog it because I'm really enjoying it and I really want the finished product. So hopefully I will also be able to work on this whip once I get the pattern printed on a piece of paper. My next abandoned whip is my biggest one, and if you follow my podcast, you might have a good guess at what it is. And that is my Whitmoor Cardigan. So the Whitmoor Cardigan is a pattern by Amy Loudon. I started this, I don't remember when I started it, but I was really excited to knit it. Basically, it's this beautiful circular yoke lace cardigan, and the yarn that I'm using is Sorella Yarn Classic DK in the color Townhouse, which is a creamy off-white, and there is some variation in the yarn that you might be able to see like right there, so it gives it some added dimension. But I knit this cardigan in the size medium. Now, when I started this pattern, I was debating what size to make because the suggested amount of ease is 0 to 3 inches of positive ease. And the size small was going to give me 0 inches of positive ease, and the size medium was going to give me 4 inches of positive ease. So I was a little bit scared about 0 positive ease. I feel like I didn't really understand what it meant. I thought maybe it was going to be too form-fitting, which I did not want. So I opted to go for the size medium for 4 inches of positive ease. And then on top of that, I gauge swatched, and I did have to go up in needle size. So the suggested needle size is 4mm needles with a DK weight yarn, and to get gauge, I ended up needing to go up to 4.5mm needles. So I knit the whole yoke and I split for the sleeves, and then I tried it on, and it was way too big. It just seemed very oversized. It didn't look like it fit. I feel like it looked like it was too big, and I was nervous. I was like, I don't know if I can continue knitting this. I don't think it's looking the way I want it to look, but let me block it and really confirm the sizing to make sure that it's actually way too big and I wasn't just imagining things. So with that, I kind of put this to the side. I didn't block it for a really long time until this week. I decided to finally block it and figure out what was going on with the gauge and the sizing. So this is all blocked, and I will try it on and show you guys how it looks. And the blocking, of course, because you have lace, the blocking really helped open up all those eyelets and definitely made it larger than it was unblocked. So this is it on. Let me back up so you can see a little bit more. So yeah, this is what we're dealing with. Obviously, the lace pattern is beautiful. I still love the pattern. I definitely want this finished cardigan in my wardrobe, so I just got to figure out what size will work for me. But you can see here all of this positive ease. Even when it's completely buttoned up, it's going to sit like this. And it's not terrible. I'll be honest, it's not terrible. It's just not the look I was going for. I think I like the look of it with, less positive ease, a little bit closer fitting. I wouldn't have all this extra fabric over here. And even on the back, you can see that it's pretty large. So let's talk about numbers. So I put this on my blocking board and measured it laying flat, and across the whole cardigan body, the width was 21 inches. And remember, it was laying flat, so you have to multiply that by 2 to get the circumference. So that would give me a cardigan body circumference of 42 inches. Now on me, that is 8 inches of positive ease, which is obviously too much from what the pattern suggests and what I wanted. So I then took out the ruler and got the gauge of my stitches, and I was measuring 5 stitches per inch. And then I went back to the pattern and I was like, okay, what gauge am I supposed to get? and the pattern gauge is 5¼ stitches per 1 inch. So I wasn't even that far off with the gauge. I think that just shows you how even just a 1/4 stitch off in gauge can really make a dramatic difference. I think in something like a circular yoke, it gets even more exaggerated than if it was a drop shoulder or a raglan construction. So there's a whole bunch of factors that I think went into this cardigan not fitting. One being me picking the wrong size to begin with, and the second one being that the gauge also was too big, and those two things combined made it very big. And then I did also increase needle size, so maybe if I had stuck with the 4mm needle instead of the 4.5mm needle, I might have gotten the correct gauge. I did some knitting math, which is where you take the gauge that you're knitting on and then you sort of look at the schematics and the dimensions of the pattern and figure out what size I should be knitting with my gauge to get the correct fit at the end. So it turns out that I actually need to go down 2 whole sizes in this pattern and knit the extra small with my gauge to get a cardigan that gives me 0 inches of positive ease. So that means I have to frog this, but I'm excited to frog it and restart. I think now that I know the actual issue and I know how to solve it, I feel like I can conquer the world now, that I can restart this cardigan and know that I'm going to get a fit that I like at the end of it. And it's kind of fun figuring this all out. I think this is a process that every knitter should go through, although don't try to knit the wrong size, but I think it's a great learning experience to really understand how your gauge affects your sizing, how your needle size and the size you pick affects the finished garment. So I'm excited to restart this. I'm excited to frog it. I think it'll be fun to pull out all the yarn, although I did alternate skeins, so I feel like that might be a little bit annoying because every other row I'm going to be pulling from a different ball, but I'm excited to restart this cardigan and get it back on the needles. With that being said, I do a lot of other garment projects on my needles right now, and they're all very summer specific. I'm doing a lot of summer tank tops, and I'm starting to feel the pressure of wanting to finish those summer tank tops soon. So I don't think I'm gonna restart this very soon. This might get pushed to the fall and be like a September or October project for me. But now I know what I'm doing, so I'm looking forward to frogging and restarting this cardigan. All right, we're on to my last abandoned whip, and that is a crochet project. And I think the podcast viewers who have been with me for a while will remember this. If you do, I really appreciate you guys for sticking around, because I think I only mentioned this in like 1 episode, possibly 2. But this is Lakeside Mist by Janine Miska, who's also known as Knits and Knots. This is a pattern from her Modern Crochet Sweaters book that I own, and I started crocheting this with Lion Brand Feels Like Butter yarn in the color Cocoa, which is this really nice sort of muted chocolatey brown. This is 100% acrylic yarn, and it's like this chainette, very like brushed, kind of fuzzy yarn, and the fabric it makes is really nice. It's like kind of velvety and really cozy. Like I was picturing a very cozy long line cardigan for the fall to layer over t-shirts or tank tops for that nice transitional time. So this is all I have done on it. The cardigan is crocheted in panels and you seam them together at the end. So this was the first panel for like the front. So this part here would go over my shoulder. So it's both the front and the back panel here, and that's why there is ribbing at the bottom. Now, I think there's a lot of things with this project that have deterred me from working on it. I think the first is the pattern. I just think it's not my style anymore. I think I don't really see myself wearing that sort of long line cardigan that much, and I just don't feel that motivated to work on it because I know that I'm not super excited about the pattern. I think it's also the yarn a little bit. I feel like I don't really like this color as much as I did when I first bought it. So again, that's also something where it's like, not only do I not really love the pattern style anymore, but I also don't really love the yarn color. And lastly, I think it's because it's crochet. You guys know knitting is my number one preferred craft. I do crochet a little bit, but I think my motivation to crochet for long periods of time in very large projects, I just don't have that sort of motivation. And this is obviously a very large commitment of a crochet project, and it's a lot of crocheting to do, and I just haven't been excited to pick it up and crochet. I am working on a granny square crochet blanket slowly over time, and I think for me that's more doable because a crochet granny square I can finish in one day. And even though like the blanket as a whole is a large project, each of those little squares to me is like one finished like project in of itself. Even though this is made in components too, these panels are just too big for me to want to work on. I just don't really have that excitement for crochet like I do with knitting. So for all of those reasons, I am going to be frogging this project, and I don't think I'm going to keep the yarn because I don't really know what I would use it for otherwise. So I will probably be putting this in like a de-stash for sale on my website. So keep an eye out on Instagram for me to post that if you do want this yarn. I'll be listing it at like a discounted price to give it to someone who will enjoy it. But yeah, kind of sad. I always feel sad when I frog projects knowing that I'm not going to get back to them. But I think it's for the better. There's no point in this lingering if I know I'm not going to work on it nor finish it. So those are all of my abandoned whips, and I think for the ones that I want to keep, I have a good path forward to increasing my motivation to work on those again and get those back in my rotation of projects. And for the ones that I know I need to frog and either restart or move on from, I think I have good closure with that there. I think it's a good thing every once in a while to sort of assess your projects, especially if you're someone like me and have a lot of projects on the needles at a time, to sort of assess ones that might have not been looked at in a while and see what's going on with them and really get to the root of the problem to hopefully correct it or figure out a way that you can move on from them. I'm curious if you guys have any abandoned whips and how you go about deciding if you're going to keep or move on from them. Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and joining me today. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.